Could Alabama be getting a very sneaky commitment this weekend at the Champions Cookout?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama, HSA's radio network. Luke Robinson, that's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein, that's him. Want to thank all of our everydayers for joining us, and also want to thank you newbies for coming in. We appreciate you guys. We are creeping up on 11,000 subscribers and want to get there before the beginning of the season, so please help us out there. Also want to thank Gametime for being our sponsor, and of course, Locked On is your team every day. Jimmy, some news has come out about Champions Cookout. The list is growing. First of all, I want to start with one that is the biggest surprise to me. Anquan Fagans will now be at the cookout, allegedly.
It's been reported by Hastings, so we can go with that. Joseph Hastings at BOL has reported it, so I believe him.
No, I believe him. I guess I'm using the term allegedly in the sense that, Fagans has long since thought to be an Auburn lean,
right?
If not practical commitment, silent commitment. And he's going to Big Cat too. He's also going to, I think, LSU Friday. Boy, he's got a busy week now.
I thought I was busy.
So, and his commitment date is coming up. I think it's like is it the 29th?
He's saying the 29th, but as we've seen
that can always be pushed
back. Right.
So, here's the thing. I like Anquan Fagans a lot. Now, you and I have talked about on here, for whatever reasons, Alabama's had a lot of luck securing Thompson commitments. They just hadn't necessarily panned out at Alabama. Talia Tagovailoa probably being the best, and he did his best work at Maryland. Now, Jeremiah Alexander certainly might change a lot of minds this year. We hope he does. But I'm all for getting Anquan Fagans if Alabama can. Oh, yeah. I led with the cold open saying, could they get a sneaky commitment? And I'll be honest with you, I was just trying to lure you in. The commitment is Big Cat. He's committing. No, he's not committing to Big Cat. He's committing to the Champions Cookout is what I meant. And so let's see if he does follow through and go with it, because, now that Alabama has missed out on Ivan Taylor, and he's gone to Michigan, you got to think, in a way you're like, okay, we're circling back. Maybe it's not the first choice. Maybe it's not. But I think if you're Alabama, you still say, look, the scholarship, the opportunity's here. And this class is number one class in the country, and don't you want to be a part of that?
Yeah, this is a real interesting recruitment going all the way back to the beginning. First of all, as Luke said, just, as if anyone would care what Luke and I think, we're on the same page. I like Anquan Fagans. If he ends up in this class, I'd be excited for Alabama. I think Fagans is a good prospect. I don't think he's a five-star. Let's throw week-long Great Gatsby parties because Fagans committed. It's not, but he's a good player. The fact he's in state, the fact he's from Thompson are all pluses for me. And again, I think the kid's good. I saw him play in NFL Network, and one of the 7-on-7 things they've shown this summer on NFL Network, and I watch him playing that. And he's an athlete now. He's good. I like him more than I liked his older brother, who committed to Alabama, has sort of bounced around now to some different places. But I like Anquan from the jump more than I like the older brother. Now, how serious is Alabama about Anquan? I would say pretty serious, because he's coming to the Champions Cookout. We said on yesterday's show, hey, if you're coming to this cookout, you're on the list, right? You're definitely somebody that Alabama has a high amount of interest in. So Alabama's serious about Anquan. There's a good chance they've been serious about him the whole time. It's kind of tough sometimes in recruiting to know, even when you're well-sourced like we are at BOL. It's sometimes hard to know, okay, at what point did who start liking who a little more? You've almost got the sense that he wasn't at the top of Alabama's safety board, and that the kid wasn't that enamored with the idea of going where Big Brother did, where it didn't work out. It was almost like a two-way street of but now it's getting down time to who's going to sign with who. And here's a national blue chip prospect in Birmingham, and Alabama needs another safety. It just makes sense here late for Alabama. And maybe Fagans is looking at it like, hey, I didn't know how recruiting's going to work out. And I didn't have a positive view of Alabama based on what happened with Traquan, my brother. But I want to go to a big-time place. And here's one 45 minutes away that's a national top 5 program. Maybe they have new coaches, and I should give this a listen. So in other words, my working theory here is that both Alabama and Fagans have sort of, hey, when it comes down to decision time, have sort of found each other. Like, hey, this makes some sense here for both of us. Now, is Fagans going to end up going somewhere other than Auburn? Can't tell you that. The recruitment at Alabama is just now getting started, even though it's starting. Hey, Champions Cookout's not a first date. That's not a first date. This is meet the parents. This is meet the parents date, right? So that's kind of where it's starting at meet the parents. Well, Alabama's already met the parents, but that was the old staff. I think this is fascinating to watch. And this is why, one last thing before I throw it back to you, Luke. This is why I get on the show and beg people not to assume too much. People, the recruiting fans, just love to assume and connect dots and move 7 bridges ahead in time of where we are. Don't assume too much. And I would imagine there's some posts and some comments by Alabama fans about Fagans that they're going to want back, because, again, assuming too much, too little. Recruiting is a process. It's not decided back in March and April.
No, that's absolutely correct. And one note, I've been feeling like he was going to end up at Auburn this whole time, and he still very well may.
He may.
But I know at one time, too, the talk was Traquan Fagans, who was at Alabama. Then he ultimately transferred to USC. Now he's transferred to UCF. He's at Central Florida. Isn't that correct, Jimmy?
Traquan, yeah, he's I wanted to say Georgia Tech, but no, I think that's right, Central Florida.
Yeah, it's Central
Maybe it's
Florida.
because they're both gold. Maybe because they're both gold.
Yeah. And, there was talk that Traquan was also going to transfer to Auburn. That didn't happen. So I wonder how much of that plays into this. I wonder how much of, I don't know if there's any bad blood between Traquan or the Fagans family and Alabama. And if there was, maybe that was between the Saban staff. So maybe this staff is like, hey, new ball game. Let's try this. I don't know. I'm calling it what it is. I feel like Alabama took a swing at Ivan Taylor. It didn't work out fine. I'm also willing to say you don't want to call Anquan Fagans a runner-up prize. I don't think that's what he is. I think he's a very good player.
He's too good for that. Look, there's levels to everything. It starts with this. Are you good enough? Are you good enough? If you are, welcome to the board. Then it's about pecking order. But everyone on the board is good enough or they wouldn't be up there. They don't put kids on the board that they're like, he's not good enough to play here. Well, let's just throw him up there and bat it around. No, everyone on the board has been adjudged good enough. But then there has to be a pecking order because there could be 11 safeties that are good enough. You don't want to walk away with your number 10 and 11, right?
Right.
You want to walk away with your 1 and 2 if at all possible. But at the same time, you're recruiting 1 and 2. You got to recruit 10 and 11 because you could end up there, in reality. So no one is look, we're in the age of the transfer portal, people. That's why everyone's good enough, because if Alabama just didn't simply if Alabama's like, you know what, we like Derek Smith and no other safety we could get we like. We don't like any of them. We only like Derek Smith. That would be fine because Alabama could address this spot in the transfer portal. We're not recruiting for this team. That's already hay in the barn. You're recruiting for the next team. You got 2 transfer portal windows before you get to the 2025 season. So, look, there's no B list anymore. There really wasn't one. That was a terrible term that people came up with for he's not the first or second choice on your board. But the fact of the matter is everyone on the board is a take. You just massage the board and hope you get the top targets on your board. But I'm with you, Luke. Today I've been thinking Fagans to Auburn for a long time. One thing I'd be interested to know, maybe we should ask Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn, was Traquan a take at Auburn?
I don't know that.
Did he choose Central Florida over Auburn? Because most kids from Birmingham would not.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens.
There's some Birmingham connections or Alabama connections. Gus Malzahn's coach at UCF. I don't know. But, Jimmy, listen, I sort of teased everybody with my sneaky commitment, but Alabama may actually get a commitment this weekend, and it's from a guy we've been expecting. But, of course, I want to tell you about Game Time right now, and I never read their live read. They may get mad at me, but I'm hoping my authenticity shines through with this Game Time, not live read, live train of thought that I have, because I love the Game Time app. I've got some other friends that are going to be going to the Wisconsin-Alabama game with me, and they said, hey, we got to get some tickets. I said, I got the place, yo. I know where I'm getting them, and that's from Game Time, because that app is so easy to use. I absolutely love it. And for first-time users, if you use code Locked On College, you get $20 off your first purchase. Now, I'm not a first-time user, but that's okay, because you get the best prices anyway. You get to see where your seats are. You get to see everything. And the customer service, chef's kiss, top-notch, absolutely awesome. So if you are a first-time user and you want to give this a whirl because I'm doing such a marvelous job of selling it, go to Game Time, get that app, and use code Locked On College for $20 off that first order. You will not be disappointed. Also want to remind everybody, go check out Locked On Sports today. Look, if you're tired of the screaming, you're tired of the yelling and the nonsensical takes, go check out Locked On Sports today. You can get it on YouTube or Amazon. It's just fantastic. It's awesome. Go check them out. And remember that Locked On is your team every day, just like we are. Now, Jimmy, I want to squeeze a few things into this segment, so bear with me, because we got Malachi Moore coming up in the third segment. Not literally, so AK Deer, he's going to be coming in now. He was a late addition to the Champions Cookout. Jimmy, at this point, I would be disappointed if he is not committed by Sunday afternoon.
Disappointed?
Disappointed.
I'm not going to be disappointed he's not publicly committed. I think the fact that he's a Champions Cookout speaks volumes about where Alabama sits. I'm comfortable not only with Alabama's recruitment of AK Deer, but BOL's batting average on the predictions. He doesn't have to commit for me Sunday or Monday for me to believe that, but I would agree with our stance over at BOL that AK Deer will commit to Alabama in July. And heck, I've been so freaking busy, I didn't realize, Luke, July's almost over. So yeah, maybe you could be right because I think he's going to commit to Alabama in July, and I believe July is over next Wednesday. So it's coming. I'm just now adding 2 and 2. Look, when you're as busy as I am this week, you lose track of all time. Football season's still close, right? That's still coming, correct?
As far as I know. Look, Jimmy, I'm going to tell you something. It's been the weirdest 2 weeks in history. We've had assassination attempts. We've had Secret Service people resign. We've had SEC media days. We've had a UCLA coach that destroyed Alabama in 2000 at a game which I attended. If I wish he had frozen up in 2000 the way he froze up at that podium. Deshaun Foster, that was the worst.
Stage fright. That was stage fright.
Deshaun Foster debate Joe Biden, and I'd say Joe Biden's going to beat him.
I know people have fun with that, and I get it. I get people having fun with it, and coaches shouldn't suffer from stage fright. That's exactly what that was to me. I was like, oh, wow, he had some stage fright issues. But even Adele, doesn't like to tour over her stage fright issues. And we're just talking about maybe the greatest singer in the history of God's universe. And she's like, I don't want to be on that stage. So, I don't think people should poke at it, but people will, because this is football, and everybody's mean. It's a mean sport. People hate each other.
Of all the strange things that have happened, like an assassination attempt, the president essentially saying he's backing out, like all these other things that are national news, for me in my sports world, that's like in the top 5. That was the worst. When he got up there and said, it reminded me of the Ms. USA from South Carolina, who was like, and such, and as always, Iran and the children, and we remember that whole speech that was just awful.
Now that you mention it,
but he said, UCLA, we're in Los Angeles, also USC is there, and then silenced. That was it. That was the news he brought to the table.
UCLA and USC are located,
I know.
in the same town. Boy, UCLA probably in for a rough year. Hey, I mentioned this to you yesterday in the text thread thing that we have. For a lot of Alabama fans may not realize the other finalist for the UCLA head job was Tommy Rees, and they chose Deshaun Foster over Tommy Rees. And I know Alabama fans in general have a negative view of Tommy Rees, but let's remember how young Tommy is, and maybe he might be one of the guys where that's a better role for him. I mean, I'm just saying this, between the two of them, my opinion alone, and it was before we saw yesterday, if those were your two finalists, I would have hired Tommy Rees. And I bet you 12 years from now, Tommy Rees is a thing in college football, and maybe Deshaun Foster won't be.
I'm kind of pulling for him. I think he's a very likable guy, and that was almost too normal. Like, if you're a coach, you got to be wired differently. And that is off to such a bad start. I don't know how in the world you change it, but regardless,
Can you name their quarterback? Who's their quarterback?
Well, it's not Dante Moore because he transferred to Oregon, but they got a transfer, I believe.
I think it's a guy named Ethan Gerbers. And if I'm right, man, how that can't be good news. Shouldn't we know the UCLA quarterback? I mean, shouldn't we know that? Troy Aikman. It's like a Cade McCown. Gosh, they've had several, I know, although none are screaming. Rick Neuheisel, maybe. They've had several great ones in their history, and now we struggle to name who the starter is. I think
Gary
it's
Beeben or something. All right, but I did want to bring this up too. That so anyway, I expect AK Deer to commit, and I love it. We've talked about him a lot, so no reason to dive in that anymore. I wanted to say this: Jaylen Milroe was on CBS Mornings, I guess this morning. I had no idea this was happening. I had some kids coming in. I had to go pick them up from the airport, and I was just going down the YouTube rabbit hole, and oh my God, this guy, he might be the most likable quarterback we've had since I don't even know when. I mean, look, Jay Barker back in the day, he was likable in the sense that he sort of played with a chip on his shoulder. Bryce Young, to me, is still maybe my all-time favorite player, and he's incredibly likable, but he's so soft-spoken, it's really hard to, it's not like he just is magnetic. Tua Tagovailoa, you wanted to love him so much, and he is fun and plays the ukulele and all this other stuff, but he's hurt so much. Mac Jones, very likable, but sort of like in a frat boy kind of way. Own it. Jalen Hurts, incredibly likable, but also very soft-spoken. Milroe got on CBS this morning. He also did his First Take or something like that today.
Get Up. He did Get Up on ESPN.
Get Up. Yeah. My God, Jimmy, this guy is – can we, if he doesn't make it in the pros, I say we hire him in some capacity just to go around and spread the good word about Alabama, because this guy,
Rush chairman.
He is Rush chairman. There's no doubt. Jaylen Milroe is so much more lovable than we even know. If this can work out, Jimmy, if Kalen DeBoer can reach his potential and get him where we think he needs to be, he doesn't have to reach too deep either. I mean, he's brimming with potential. There's no doubt in my mind this guy can win the Heisman Trophy and win a national championship for Alabama. And I'm telling you, if he does that with this smile, with this personality, this magnetism, this everything about him is awesome. And I don't understand. I still have people, we still have people in the comments who are like, still think it's going to be Ty Simpson. I love Ty Simpson. But let's stop this. Let's embrace this guy right now. This is a beautiful human being who happens to be a world-class athlete and our starting quarterback, and let's learn to love him with all we got.
It's not apples to apples. It's not apples to apples at all. But in retrospect, shouldn't have every Alabama fan embraced Jalen Hurts and Tua both? In retrospect, shouldn't we have had our arms around both at all times? And guess what? We can do that right here with Jaylen Milroe and Ty Simpson both. I mean, they're both on the same team. We should both want them to do extremely well. And heck, we may need both. We may need both this year, because there were two different seasons where for Alabama to win championships, they needed Jalen and Tua both. And who's to say that won't be the case with Jalen and Ty? Jalen's agents, shout out to Jalen's agents. Shout out to Yay Alabama and everybody that worked to get Jalen in New York this week doing that car wash of national shows, because guess what? that makes a difference come Heisman time. It makes a difference come Heisman time. And that's why he's doing it. But at the same time, and you're like, well, that's selfish. He's going to Heisman tour instead of practicing. It aids Alabama immensely. For a player to be in the Heisman race. And I assure you, Kalen DeBoer and Alabama football would love to see Jaylen Milroe win a Heisman Trophy. It's a lot of it's publicity. It's a publicity tour for Jaylen. But y'all watch the interviews. Is Jaylen talking about himself? No, he's talking about his team, and he's talking about his coaches, because that's you'd expect
Jimmy,
nothing less from that kid.
Breaking news: UCLA has just offered Jaylen Milroe its head coaching position.
There's a kid who's never had stage fright in his life.
Stage fright. I mean,
Jaylen would throw a side body block on Mother Teresa to get at a microphone.
And he'd do it smiling, and then he'd help her up after the interview. That's the kind of guy he is. There's no doubt. Anyway, I was blown away by it. Go check out CBS Mornings or Get Up and watch this on YouTube. If you're an Alabama fan, you're going to love it. You're going to be super impressed. You're going to love him even more. Malachi Moore, number 9 on Jimmy Stein's world famous roster countdown. Dare I say, outside of Jaylen Milroe, the leader of the team? I mean, I think Jaylen is almost on Mount Olympus. He's almost a little above everybody. But, Malachi is sort of like, he's sort of wrangling everything in. Malachi feels like Malachi was not born a Saban bot, I don't think, but I think he is trying his best to program himself to be one. And I'm a big fan. I will have no problem saying this. Still believe. So tell me if I'm wrong. I still believe Malachi's best season was probably his freshman season.
Yeah, that was when he played his most disruptive football.
I don't know why that is. I don't know why the play has not gotten exponentially better, but I feel like it will. For whatever reason, it just he went from somebody that we thought was going to be George Teague-like to, and I don't mean that just because they both wear 13, but it hadn't really come to fruition that he is Landon Collins or somebody like that, and I don't think he will be. But I think he can be the leader of this team, and I think that's where he's finding his role and his place, and I think that's going to make him so much better and so much more visible this year.
Yeah, and we could do the whole show, Malachi. I agree, especially your first point about how, in my mind, my knowledge of this team in this locker room, the offense belongs to Jaylen Milroe. It's Jaylen Milroe's team. It's Jaylen Milroe's offense. It's Malachi Moore's defense. I mean, this is his defense. He's the captain. He's the traffic cop. He's in charge on the field. It's Coach Kai to those guys on the field. Immensely experienced, a good player, capable of great plays, very disruptive as a freshman. He's going to be playing deep safety full time. Last year played deep safety more than people think. I want to remind people, I don't like Malachi at safety. Last year, a lot of snaps, Terrion Arnold played star. Y'all all remember Terrion Arnold playing star? When Terrion played star, who was a safety? Malachi. Malachi would move back to safety, not off the field. So Malachi, hugely experienced, coach on the field, traffic cop, captain. He will have his name in the sidewalk twice. I mean, that's a short list. Name in the sidewalk twice. Milroe's headed there. Malachi's headed there. I said it reminds me of 2021. I know that's not everybody's favorite season because we're spoiled and ruined, Alabama fans, ruined by Nick Saban. But 2021, the team was clearly led by Bryce Young on offense and Will Anderson on defense. Jaylen and Malachi aren't Bryce and Will as players, but as leaders, they may even be better. I mean, in terms of like, this is their team clearly. And that's just great. And shout out to Malachi for coming back. In terms of my comp for him, it's Brian Branch. I think he's Branch, but I'm going to admit, don't go too far. I'm going to admit he's lesser Branch. And by that, I mean, Brian Branch.
Instincts are better.
Branch is just a slightly better athlete. I think Branch is more athletic, capable of even playing some cornerback, which I don't think Malachi could get away with at the highest levels. But to me, he's a lot like Brian Branch. but Branch was a second-round pick, and I think Malachi is Branch the fourth-round pick. Like 2, maybe 3 rounds. But like, hey, if you like Brian Branch, you're gonna like this guy. You're just kind of getting the 4th or 5th round version of it.
Well, and let's also call a spade a spade. Branch should have been a first-round pick. That
should have been.
Hey, I mean,
Malachi
they just misevaluated.
And any team that drafts Malachi Moore will be getting exactly what they're getting, the Nick Saban coach DB, who's not going to bust, who's going to be a leader, who's going to be great in your clubhouse, and he's going to be good enough. Is he going to be an NFL All-Pro? I don't think so, but boy, would I love to be wrong. There's no one I would rather become a first-team All-American this fall than Malachi. And, man, he almost did it. He's a third-team All-American as a freshman.
Malachi and Jaylen being first-team All-Americans this year, I mean, they'd have to go down as 2 of the most beloved players in Alabama history. I mean, it's a long list, and it's very subjective, but and we also have recency bias. But, boy, if that were to happen, and considering the nature of the sport today where everybody can transfer out, everybody leaves early, it's all about the money. And, these 2 guys have taken their lumps, even from Alabama fans, and they stuck around. And if they were to, lead the Tide to the promised land and make first-team All-Americans, I'd say let them put their handprints on Denny Chimes.
They're very popular on the team, which is different than popular with the fans. They're, of course, popular with the fans, both. One's a quarterback and one's been here for 5 years as a starter. They're popular with the fans because we know them so well. But I can just tell you guys from the inside, they're popular on the team. Their teammates love them, both of them, Jaylen and Malachi.
I just want to throw this out there before we bounce, Jimmy. The NFL's top 100 players, which is a fun thing the NFL does every single year. It's kind of like your roster countdown. They've already gotten into the 50s, and there are already 6 Bama players. Number 90, Devontae Smith, which is, excruciatingly low, if you ask me. He will be much higher next year. 79 is Minkah Fitzpatrick. I thought a little low. And then 70 is Amari Cooper. I would thought maybe it was a little high at this stage in Amari's career. 63 is Jalen Waddle. 54 is Jonathan Allen. And 52 is Pat Surtain II. There are going to be some more Alabama dudes on here. I mean, obviously, Tua will be on there. I mean, Brian Branch may be on this thing for all.
It'll just be cool that Jalen Hurts. It'll be cool that Alabama has the most, and you have the most players in the NFL. It'd be great if, in addition to the most players in the NFL, you have the most players in the top 100, because that would mean that your guys aren't bust. It's the expectation, right? If you have the most in the NFL, then maybe you should have the most in the top 100. And if Alabama does, it should dispel those silly myths about all these Bama busts in the NFL. There's 70 guys in the NFL. Some of them, it's not going to work out.
Yep, that's right. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back soon. And until then, roll Tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.